Welcome to the Legal Innovation Forum podcast series, Leading at the Intersection of Business, Innovation and Law. I'm Lucy Saddleton, Managing Editor at the Legal Innovation Forum. Brought to you in association with LexisNexis, today's episode features a panel discussion from the Legal Innovation Forum Toronto 2026 on the law firm of 2030. This panel explores how the traditional law firm model is being reshaped by rapidly evolving client expectations, talent dynamics, economic pressures, and the rapid adoption of AI.
We have Sukesh Kamra, Emily Wesson, Tania Djerrahian, and Jackie Dinsmore. Jackie, maybe we'll start with you.
Sure. My name is Jackie Dinsmore. I'm managing partner of Caravel Law. We are a revolutionary law firm with about 120 lawyers, previously called Cognition, and really happy to be here.
Hi, I'm Emily Wesson, based in Toronto for BLG Beyond. BLG Beyond is BLG's ALSP, Alternative Legal Services Provider. Hopefully everyone knows what that acronym is by now. I lead all of the functions there, and in addition, I also lead our Lawyers on Demand or freelance legal staffing offering.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sukesh Kamra. I'm the Chief Knowledge and Innovation Officer here at Torys in Toronto. I'm responsible for our knowledge management team, our legal innovation team, and our library research team.
Hi, I'm Tania Djerrahian. I'm from Davies. I'm the Senior Director of Innovation and Knowledge. I take care of our innovation strategy as well as knowledge management and library.
Great, thank you all. So we'll get started. First, we're going to talk a little bit about economics. The first question is around client expectations. So in your experience, how are client expectations evolving with respect to lawyers' use of AI? Are clients proactively encouraging its use? Are they pushing back? Looking ahead, do you foresee AI becoming an expected component of legal service delivery? And maybe we can start with Sukesh.
Yeah, I mean, listen, this technology is like the same technologies we went through when we were talking about mobile computing, when we were talking about cloud computing, right? We've got these phases of usage that we come across. Frankly, we wouldn't be here on stage if we didn't know about ChatGPT a few years ago, right? So that was that first stage or phase where people were trying to understand, clients were starting to understand, what is this piece of technology? Let's explore it. How does it impact my work that you as law firms do? So there was a healthy skepticism, there was some reluctance. And that was sort of phase one. Phase two was probably a couple of years ago where we started to think about, maybe we're gonna move into trial. We're gonna try these technologies out on some of these matters. But the clients would always say a couple things. They'd say, number one, if you're gonna use it on my matters, but make sure that the matter is not actually training the model, right? So my content is not training the model, and that was very, very important. The second was, we want to make sure the data stays in Canada. And that was a conversation because a lot of the processing of that data was still happening in the United States. So it was trial, but there was that sort of, the reluctance was less, but we wanted to make sure there were conditions that were met. The good thing about that second phase was that a lot of our clients were using these tools, right? You're starting to see licenses to Copilot and GPT Enterprise. Some clients were building technologies. So the AI literacy was actually coming to fruition for the clients as well. So that was really, really good. Fast forward to what I would say sort of tail end of last year into this year's kind of phase three, which is there is an expectation that we're actively using artificial intelligence on their matters. There's an expectation that there's going to be some efficiency gains, which is always a very interesting conversation because we're not seeing those efficiency gains right now. We're still sort of trying these technologies, seeing where they work. So that's kind of where we are today. I think one of the things we're going to start to see is there's going to be almost a mandatory use, responsible use, but a mandatory use of artificial intelligence in this phase three from our clients.
All right, thank you. Tania, maybe you've got something.
I wholeheartedly agree with Sukesh. I'll add to it that in this phase, we're also seeing a lot of clients who are very much interested in implementing the generative AI tools that are available in the legal space. So we're seeing also an expectation from clients on giving them guidance on how to select these tools, helping them find use cases for them as well as understanding the limits of the tools themselves. So you can see that it's creating there's a lot of potential to create value for the client, and that's what they want to work on with us. I will say more and more with the clients who are already very advanced on their own AI journey, we're seeing in certain cases, we're hearing a lot of discussions that, we expect to see AI across the firm, use of AI across the firm, and sometimes that will be the differentiator in terms of awarding an RFP if all things are otherwise equal. So I've heard of conversations like that. The other thing that we're starting to see is a lot of clients who are curious about how we can collaborate on these tools together. How can we share this technology together? What part of the process is staying with whom? And how can we work better together? So there's a lot of discussions on that, and that's becoming more and more possible as well, because a lot of these tools that all of us law firms are using are making it much more easy to collaborate on shared spaces and the like.
Thank you. And in relation to client expectations, with respect to how clients can expect to pay for this, as firms are increasingly adopting AI, are we seeing a shift toward more alternative fee arrangements, or maybe the introduction of specific technology-related fees? What approaches do you think are resonating with clients and are proving sustainable in practice? Maybe Jackie, you can start.
First of all, thank you for everyone staying for this late session. One of my colleagues said we should play a drinking game. Every time we say AI or client, you have to drink. So we'll keep you guys awake that way. That's great. That's great.
Hallucination.
Yes, exactly. Or hallucinations, a third one.
Can we participate too?
Yeah, I think we should. I love this question because how long have we been talking about innovative pricing? It feels like it's been 25 years. And when I thought about this question, I thought really about 5 buzzwords that kind of answer it. So one is predictability, right? What are our clients looking for? They want predictability in their pricing. They might not actually even care how many hours it takes. They want to know how much it's going to cost and how long will it take. I think that's really important for a lot of folks here. Which brings me to creativity, right? Creativity in how we price. So we've been hearing about fixed fee pricing and cap fee and subscription and retainers and success fee based. And I think it's important for us to relook at that because now it's much easier for us to price that way because we kind of know how long it will take because AI has helped us with that. Brings me to my third buzzword, which is value. I think this one is so important. A little anecdote, I remember a client who said to me, if you can get us this result, I will pay $10,000 for it. Now, subject to Law Society rules, which Sukesh will talk about a little bit, we thought, okay, great. Did it cost us $10,000 in time? Probably not. But there's a lot of factors that go into reasonableness, which is what the Law Society looks for. And we got them the result. They paid the $10,000 and they were thrilled. An example of a fixed fee that really works. Another buzzword I often think about when we talk about what clients are looking for is oversight. Lawyers that are going to be able to navigate AI, understand it, be there for it, are going to be so valuable. And we're going to talk a little bit about junior lawyers later, but I'm seeing a lot of reverse mentorship. It's absolutely fantastic. Junior lawyers being able to mentor senior lawyers on how to use technology. How wonderful. I don't think it's going to be a situation where junior lawyers don't have jobs anymore. It's really going to see a shift in how they provide that value. And then last but not least, I can't not talk about ALSPs and innovative law firms. This is their time to shine, right? They've been saying this for years where they're looking at different efficiencies and processes, trying to do things better, trying to innovate in pricing, trying to have flex staffing. So it's a time for ALSPs to shine, innovative law firms to shine, even the Seven Sisters and the big firms and big law. It's time for them to really grapple and understand this better and provide what clients are looking for.
Thank you. Sukesh.
Just a couple things to add. Technology-related fees was part of the question. I don't see any client paying technology-related fees. Yeah. So let's just throw that out, right? That's the price of admission, right? These days, photocopying was the cost before. Nobody pays for that anymore. So I think that's something that we should put to the side. Number two, I think that if you put yourself in the shoes of the client for a moment, and you start thinking about whether it is always going to be an AFA or whether there is some merit to billable work, think about it for a moment. Right now, artificial intelligence is only about personal productivity, right? We haven't met that matter level efficiency gain just yet. But if we get to that stage, we all think we will get to that stage. If you're a client and you know that we spent 2 hours instead of 10 hours, wouldn't you want us to bill you 2 hours? Instead of talking about an alternative fee arrangement where there's a lot of, who knows what's in that? So I think, and we've talked about this earlier today as well, the conversation between the client and the law firm has to start happening soon, because there might be areas where the AFA makes total sense for both parties. But if we're going to say that artificial intelligence is going to lead to matter efficiency levels, then I'm sure as a client you'd probably prefer the 2 hours than the 10 hours, and you're not even interested in an AFA. So I think let's not just jump to AFA as the solution. I think we've got to have a conversation. And the last thing I'll say is the art of the possible has changed because of artificial intelligence. A couple of things that we've been doing at Torys is actually building solutions for clients, leveraging forms of artificial intelligence. So we built a couple of solutions, one in the space of tracking side letter provisions and funds and investors in a tool. It's a workflow tool. We never were able to do that before, right? So it's a new source of revenue that we charge our clients for, and we're hoping to scale that with other clients. In the financial services side, we've built and sold a structured notes product that we built for a particular client that we're hoping to sell to another client. Again, revenue that we didn't know or think about that could be generated, but because we have these technologies, the art of the possible has changed. And now we're thinking not just about AFAs and billable hours, but potentially the productization of some legal services.
Thank you. So it sounds like the billable hour might still be around for a little bit. Speaking of that, maybe you all can speak to how law firms can balance AI-driven efficiency with the traditional billable hour model while also maintaining profitability. Tania, do you want to start?
So it comes back to a lot of what Jackie and Sukesh were saying. The billable hour, first of all, is not gone, and it's not going to be gone. It's still appropriate for certain phases and tasks of matters. There are others where you're going to see more and more some kind of fixed pricing or alternative fee. And the reality is, even if we spend less time doing certain tasks, it does open the door for us to do other tasks, such as productization. And also, there's a lot of new practice areas that are developing as a result of AI. Privacy, technology, these are all fields that are increasingly growing and are new sources of revenue for firms like ours. And then the reality is you can always redeploy your people elsewhere. There's always matters, there's new clients to go after. So there's a lot of that's happening. And then if you think about it as well, AI in many ways has also increased the billable capacity by eliminating some of the admin tasks. So we have a lot of technologies and workflows that we've used to eliminate some of the time that partners spent doing billing or docketing, and all that jazz. So I think there's a lot of opportunity there. And one thing I'll add to that is it's also in certain senses allowing us to recapture some of the work that maybe went to ALSs. Now we can do those efficiently and keep that work under one hub with one set of lawyers in charge of that knowledge.
Okay, Emily, if you'd like to add.
I mean, yeah, Jackie and Sukesh kind of alluded to this, but I'll put a fine point on it. Clients expect lawyers and law firms to be proficient in providing legal services. And what I mean by that is, let's go back to 2002. The client didn't need to say, hey, I need you to use the research tool available to you to provide this memo or this work product. They just expected you to know how to do that. And to Jackie's point, my argument is that every lawyer is going to have that capability and embrace AI, and that's something that we're really focused on at our firm. And the theme of this session is a law firm of 2030. But I'd argue, if I had a crystal ball and looked at the legal industry of 2030, it would be democratizing this technology across the board so it's more available, ensuring that everyone has a minimum baseline of understanding and using these tools. And I'd also say that lawyers who are successful in the future, and we'll get to that, we have a talent section, are more flexible than they are today and are more tool agnostic. What we can't be is married to one tool or one way of doing something, because they're constantly changing. 6 months ago, we couldn't do what we could do today. So what's going to happen 18 months from now, right? And we're talking about AI and my view is that it's already intensifying the pressures that already existed, which I think is a good thing, because legal is very slow to change. And I think this might be the lightning bolt that we need to just get going, and especially in the Canadian economy with everything that's changing. Sukesh touched on this, but if anyone's paying attention, the French government, for example, is building their own software because they don't want to be reliant on Teams, and the Americans have control over the data. I was just at a Toronto Tech Week session last week, and they were talking about sovereignty and the importance of us having tools within Canada. So there's a lot here. And, you know, as lawyers in the industry or as law firms or anyone in this space, we have a duty to the Canadian economy. I won't go down this rabbit hole, I promise. But my point is, I think what's going to happen is that lawyers will be able to produce more work at a faster pace. So we'll have more work to review, not less. So I don't think we're going to need less lawyers anytime soon.
Okay, thank you. I think now we'll move into talent and workforce related questions. So this is related to de-skilling and the judgment gap. So there's a growing debate right now around the potential de-skilling risk that's posed by AI, which was spoken about by a few other panels earlier today. So if AI is now potentially performing most of the entry-level legal work, how can firms ensure that junior lawyers continue to develop sound legal skills and judgment? Maybe Emily, you can start.
Yeah, Lacora mentioned that this in their presentation. They were talking about new lawyers need new systems. And my kind of take on this is that the role of junior lawyers in particular is going to evolve, and that they're going to be able to become much more valuable much quicker, which is a great profit maker for law firms, and on a more practical note, just more useful to clients. That means that since clients are able to use AI themselves and generate first drafts that normally they would have their law firms do, I think that lawyers' roles are really going to shift to be more reviewing and quality control, which is interesting because lawyers' initial reaction is, well, we're not going to get the work, or we're not going to cut our teeth in drafting the document. But actually, if a client's going to come to you with a document that they already drafted, and you can identify what's wrong with it right away because of your 20 years of expertise and because you have that eye for that nuance, your value in that moment is really kind of amplified for the client. So there's kind of a few ways to look at it to avoid feeling afraid, and really, I think it can actually highlight what your years of experience can show you in that moment. I do think, though, the other side of that coin is that junior lawyers will need to develop that judgment and those analytical skills faster, because the expectation, if they're not getting that experience drafting like they normally would do, is that they're going to have to identify, is this a good first draft? What is it missing? What questions, what prompts do I need to go back and iterate to make sure it actually is the quality that clients and the partners of your firm expect?
Okay, Tania, maybe you'd like to add.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the whole de-skilling comes back to now we need to adjust the way we train our law students that come in, or junior lawyers that come in. So a lot of that now is teaching them how to critically review the output that's given to you by a Gen AI tool. Did you check against primary sources, against our best models, against our best practices? It's developing those skills, right? So they're just learning in a different way, whereas we learned by reviewing 1 million contracts in a diligence room what a change of control clause is. Now, the technology identifies it, and you have to confirm it, and you have to go out and you have to look at those things. The other thing is, if you're involving them also in terms of building agents or assistants within the platforms that you have, you're also teaching them about the process. How do you get to that document? What matters? What are the decisions that are going to be made? So you're actually teaching them a new set of skills. You're teaching them substance plus technology fluency. So it's just a different way of doing it than what we're traditionally used to. And I think all of this also really opens a lot of opportunity for law firms to refocus. The skills that really matter ultimately is also understanding value creation. It's about having relationships. How do you judge things? Maybe it's going to allow more time for that junior to sit in that call and listen to what's going on and learn those soft skills that before would take, a longer time to learn because you were stuck in a diligence room, for example. And then one thing I have to say that I really love about AI is also you can simulate learning patterns, right? Like you can create an assistant that's going to be a sparring partner with you either on negotiation or examining a witness or being a hostile witness or whatever. So these technologies can also be leveraged to really teach the next generation of lawyers how to work.
It's funny, we had this same conversation 10 years ago when e-discovery came out and due diligence came out with all their technologies. And we said, oh my goodness, how are we going to train the students and the junior lawyers? And yet we figured it out. And I think we're just going through that same process of asking the same questions, and I think we're gonna figure it out.
Right. We always find a way to adapt. So a little bit more specific to training, though. How do you think that firms should rethink training, career paths, and progression for junior lawyers? And although innovation is widely discussed, where do you think firms most often struggle in its execution? Do you think it's culture, incentives, other factors? Emily, maybe you can take this on.
Yeah, I know Sukesh has a lot to add to this too, but I think that law schools need to be part of this ecosystem, because to my knowledge, there's only maybe 1 or 2 law schools in Canada that talk about the business of law, which I think actually should be mandatory. But I think that legal education generally needs to modernize and to reflect the realities of practicing today and the future lawyer, the law firm of 2030, the lawyer of 2030. I think the reason that's important is so that when lawyers arrive at the firms or in-house or wherever they start their career, they have this baseline understanding that will be relevant for their success right away. To answer your question, Sabrina, I think the larger challenge is culture. A lot of many Bay Street firms still operate within a very rigid lockstep model. I don't think that traditional rigid fittable targets or a very linear career path is, first of all, realistic or something that our young talent really want to participate in. So I think the firms that create more flexible career paths earlier and start having those conversations earlier with their young lawyers are going to be more successful and have more of an opportunity to retain the future of their firm. And I know, Sabrina, you and I had a great conversation about this, and you had kind of some relevant points to share too. So, my suggestion would be that have those career development conversations earlier than you think you need to traditionally, so that you can keep that talent in-house, because junior lawyers today have a lot more options than they did. When I joined law in 2007, you can start your own tech company. You can go work for a legal tech company. You can do X, Y, and Z. So, a career at a Bay Street law firm is incredibly rewarding. It can be more rewarding if there's more options available to lawyers coming up.
Right, I agree. And having recently left big law myself, I think firms are really facing significant retention issues, especially for mid-law associates. So I think rethinking their career progression, having alternative career paths might really benefit them in retaining their talent. Sukesh, maybe you'd like to add.
I want to double down on the law schools piece. And let me ask the audience a question. How many are here representing a law school?
Exactly.
Nobody, right? And I know we're missing some people because this is the last session of the day, and so some might have been from law schools. But I think that's a call to action, right? That, to me, that's evidence of a call to action where we need to start having those conversations with law schools, whether it's at these types of sessions or other community-based sessions, because until we have that dialogue, we're not going to be able to rethink or process, re-engineer what the curriculum looks like for lawyers. At Torys, we have a relationship with CLASP at Osgood where we're teaching them how to use technologies that are right in front of them. So forget generative AI and agentic AI, it's just SharePoint and basic technologies of how you can make life easier for yourself. And hopefully they can then teach others that are coming through the pipeline at CLASP. So that's number one. Number two, I would say at the law firm side, one of the challenges we have at law firms is the substantive law training and the technology law training are typically done independent of each other. Yeah. And that is a fundamental flaw. In fact, in most law firms, there are different people, different business service groups teaching the substantive law piece and the technology law piece. And that has to change. We talk about training, but we've got to change that. And one way of training that we're trying to think about at Torys, I'm sure many of you are as well, is starting to think about decomposing a matter and saying, let's pick a matter that we do, 80% of the time, it's relatively repetitive, and let's break it down into its various tasks and ask yourself, which of these tasks can be done by machines and which of these tasks ought to be done by human lawyers? And do that repeatedly, because it's not just a one and done, but you got to do it repeatedly. And then recompose that matter, leveraging the AI pieces and the automation pieces on the tech side with the human-centered, lawyer-focused approach. And then you can start really thinking about how to train our people leveraging technology combined with substantive law training. That, to me, is fundamental.
I definitely agree with the law school piece. I don't know that there are any courses right now in law schools that are teaching about legal AI and legal tech in general. So I think we'll move a bit away from training and we'll move on to governance and operating models. And for this question, I'd like to ask, are traditional partnership models still fit for purpose? Or are new governance structures required to support scale, long-term investment, and innovation? Sukesh, you can start.
Yeah, three things. I think number one, we're all seeing this big shift that's happening where a lot of the work is staying in-house. There's less work coming to law firms, whether it goes to LSPs or it stays in-house. And so if you think about the fact that anywhere between 1% to 4% of revenue that's generated by law firms goes to the purchasing of legal technology licenses, and now we're saying, well, we're not getting as much business through the door, well, that 1% to 4% is not going to be 1% to 4% in the future. So where's the capital coming for us to be able to invest in these technologies on a sustainable basis, not just a one-year thing, but a sustainable basis, to truly transform the practice of law? And that's where I think some of the other jurisdictions with their private equity investments, venture cap investments, maybe law firms will be more like corporations in the future. I really think we've got to figure out that capital piece because a lot of the work is staying in-house. That's number one. Number two, I would say the challenge with the partnership model is that the profits from the partnership are typically distributed at, in 12-month cycles, right? So at the end of the 12 months, the money is sort of given to the partners. But we're talking about, again, sustained adoption of these technologies that are going to transform the practice. Well, that's not going to happen in 12 months, right? That's going to happen over several years. And so I think there's a bit of a misalignment between a partnership model and a truly innovative workforce. So that's number two. And then number three, partnerships rely on the rotating leadership of their organization, on the rotating committees that are looking at better ways of working, newer ways of working, leveraging technology. And so sometimes, unfortunately, it just depends on who's at the top and who's leading the committees and who's managing your partnership. And that can change very rapidly for some firms it's a little bit later, but it's not consistent. We don't have managing partners that are around for 50, 60 years, right? I mean, so that's another impediment that we've got to be careful of when it comes to the partnership model and aligning that with the innovation piece.
Thank you.
I mean, I agree with everything Sukesh said, and one thing I'd add is one of the benefits of the profit pool in a partnership model, because I agree there's a lot of issues with, every year you have to pay everyone, et cetera, et cetera. It's hard to invest long term, but I can't remember the name. Remember last week, the big firm that just committed $500 million. Yes, right. That's a big deal for law firms, right? So just so everyone knows, Kirkland and Ellis has committed $500 million to build their own AI tool. So that's the value of the partnership, banding together and saying, look, we believe in this. It's a big signal to their junior partnerships and their associates saying, we are investing in the future of this organization. And using the governance structure. Notwithstanding everything Sukesh said, I agree with it, but that is one way to leverage the partnership model.
I wish we were all Kirkland and Ellis's. Problem is we're not.
Yeah, can be.
Okay, and maybe we can move over now to competition and market shift. So looking ahead to 2030, where do you see the greatest competitive threat to traditional law firms? Do you think it's tech companies or maybe clients themselves or other firms? Maybe Emily, you can start.
Yeah, I mean, I wrote down really the unbundling of legal work and the democratization. Sukesh kind of alluded to this, but if we're talking about making the legal industry and law firms in particular more resilient, I think it's in everyone's best interest to look at where your work is coming from today, look at where you could think it's going to come from the next 3 to 5, 10 years, and be realistic about it so that you're creating, whether it's new revenue models, you talk about productization, that's something we didn't talk about really as much 10 years ago. And one kind of way to prove to yourself, well, you say, well, we'll always have this work, we've had this institutional client for 20, 30 years. Right, but everything is changing quite rapidly. And I think it was Simon Fish from TD who said, not innovating is a risk. So what I'd implore everyone to do is, now is the time to really do whatever, that weird idea you're thinking about, that new model, that new practice group you want to launch. Now is the time to stop thinking about it and just try it, because everything is changing so rapidly and you don't want to be kind of left behind. The other kind of item I'd add to this before I hand it over to Jackie is, I do think it's very interesting to see if the private equity investment will come here to Canada. So those of you who aren't following this, the Americans are kind of all over this. There's a lot of private equity coming into legal, not unlike they did with dental offices and vet clinics in the past couple of years, because there's, it's a very lucrative industry if you can get into it. And the way they're dealing with the regulatory obligations, there's unbundling the firm. So they're selling off the business services, so not the lawyer side, and they're essentially funneling the lawyers, the revenue that the lawyers generate to the new co. So there's a lot going on here in addition to the practice of law, which is why I think it's so important that lawyers and law students are educated on the business of law so that they can be prepared for the career that they're entering into. Jackie.
Yeah. I do want to say this day's been great because I've done a lot of speaking on this topic and I've been to a lot of events, and the optimism amongst the speakers and the people in the audience, I mean, it's the robots aren't coming to get us and we're all not going to have jobs, and I hear this all the time, and it actually makes me a bit sad. It makes my kids sad. Is the legal profession even going to exist in 2030, right? So when we're talking about threats, I think the answer is all three are threats. And we just have to, threat is a strong word. We just have to be cognizant of what's coming up behind us. And so I think clients are in 2030 are going to come to us with 80% of the work done. They already are doing this, saying, please take a look at this agreement. And our job is to look at it from a risk perspective and issue spotting and that kind of thing. And they just are looking for a sanity check. So there is a bit of a risk there. Right now, the documents I'm getting from clients they're not very good. The contracts aren't very good, but they're getting better. So we do have to look at what clients are doing internally in-house and on their own. I think tech is a risk, right? They're obviously addressing the less complex work. I mean, I still have PTSD of sitting in an office with 300 bankers boxes, and I was expected as an articling student to go through every single one of them. So I think this is a positive thing that we aren't expected to do that anymore, but tech are going to be unbundling this, right? So that's not something that we're going to have to do in 2030, or articling students are going to have to do in 2030. And then, I think other firms, I don't know if threat is the right word, but, kind of back to the ALSPs, and they've been talking about this for a really long time. They're looking every day for ways to make legal services better for clients. I'm very proud of Caravel because we were one of the first to have a VP of legal innovation. A lot of firms have them now. And her sole job was to look for technology that would help us provide legal services that were better for our clients. So is that a threat? I don't think so. I think it's actually making the legal industry better. And obviously the innovation on pricing has always been there. So, threat isn't another firm, it's 80% of the work done by clients, the unbundling by tech, and it's really the firms that get it that are going to be the threat. So that's where I'm at with that question.
If I can add just one thing, because I love when people say the robots are not coming.
Maybe they are. I don't know.
Well, I always say to people, I say this to our lawyers when they're prompting into GPT or Anthropic or any of these models, to make sure you do say please and thank you, because when the robots do come for us, you will be saved.
Well, and I might age myself, but I was an articling student when the internet arrived, and everyone's like, oh my gosh, the internet, we're not going to have jobs anymore. I think we're doing okay.
Yeah. So. Okay, and the last question that I have for you all is, what are one or two core capabilities that will define a successful law firm in 2030? And what should firms begin doing now to prepare for that future? Maybe we can start with Tania.
I would say one of the key core capabilities is adaptability to our ecosystem and to technology as a whole. And I think it goes back to what Andrea was saying, how to prepare is you need to re-engineer legal and other processes to account for AI. And it's understanding all the workflow from the time it's in-house to the time it arrives at our door. Who's doing what? Where does the technology sit? Which technology is best suited for each part of that work? I think if firms do a lot of that work, those that do it now are going to succeed in the long run. So there's a lot of auditing that you need to do and understand and have conversations with your clients. I think that's an important piece of this whole journey, is having a lot of these conversations upfront and honestly with each other. The other thing I think that it goes back, the other core capability is really relationship building and understanding each other. I think if you focusing on the relationships is key, because there's a lot that technology can do, but there's a lot it can't do. It might give you several answers, many of which may be right, but they don't necessarily know which answer is the most right for your client in front of you, as they might not have the entire history of that relationship and what's really at the heart of this deal, right? Even if you put it in a prompt, you're not going to be able to give a whole backlog of history as to what matters to this client. So I think that those are the two things we really need to focus on and build those capabilities within our juniors and within our firms.
Thank you. Sukesh?
There's one capability that we currently do already that I would encourage everybody not to lose, and that's that curiosity piece, right? The curiosity, the human judgment, we went to law school. None of these tools went to law school, right? That nuanced judgment, so important. And I think sometimes we get so enamored by these shiny toys that we forgot that we went to law school and we've got a brain and we've got to use our curiosity. So highly encourage that capability to stick around and spread the word that is still important. One new capability that I think is already starting to come, a lot of clients are asking for this in RFP responses, which is around the validation of the output from artificial intelligence, right? So if AI tools are going to be doing some of the mundane, low-hanging fruit work for us, how are we as lawyers going to validate that work? That's a new capability, a new core skill that we're not taught at law school. And so that's something that as law firms, we're going to have to start to teach our people, this is how you validate. And sometimes the validation takes as long, if not much longer, than the old way of doing things. And so then that, again, becomes a conversation with the client to say, actually, I'm being inefficient by using generative AI, but I guess the art of the possible is increasing. So anyways, I think it's fascinating, but those two core capabilities from my perspective are key.
Thank you. Emily?
So I think relationships will continue to be one of the most important differentiators in the legal profession. I mean, the most successful lawyers in your firm or in your organization, they already know this. They just inherently know this. But if you think about it, law is fundamentally a service industry. If we use a real life example, in my neighborhood, there's several dry cleaners I could go to. They're around the same price for a dress or a suit. But the one I choose is the one that has the friendliest staff. They're the one where I feel good about. If everything's kind of the same, I'm going to go where I like working with Jackie. I'm going to call her on a Friday afternoon. So I think that that's really important, and that, law firms should focus on training that skill, because as the advent of AI and technology and these skills, hard skills, get more democratized, what's going to matter, what's going to be the differentiator if everything else is more, the other variables are the same, is how it feels to work with Jackie and the relationship that her and I have, and who do I want to deal with when I have an issue with the board on a Sunday morning, right? So I think we have to really focus on that to be successful. So things like emotional intelligence, communication, and relationship building skills.
Yeah, and I think just to capitalize on that, I can't do dry cleaning very well, so you won't want to do business with me on that. But I think it's relationship, but I think it's really getting to know your client's business. Yeah. AI can't do that. Put yourself in the shoes of your client, and they will want to work with you, right? That practical, business-minded intent and knowledge is nothing a computer can replace, in my mind.
That's such a good point, yeah.
We have a couple minutes left. I don't know if you guys have any parting thoughts on anything.
The robots aren't coming. We're okay.
on the education piece, I think it also comes down to all of us. Call your law school where you are alumni. Suggest courses. I've been doing that with McGill. Hopefully it's coming soon in the next year, courses and things like that. But we're also responsible as a legal profession to make sure that these younger lawyers are getting the training that they need, right?
I was going to say, we speak at so many of these conferences, and the one thing that baffles my mind is that now we've got this entire community that should know each other by now, and hopefully many of you have met new faces and have conversations, but it kind of stops at this. It doesn't continue. We don't continue the conversation on LinkedIn or through email, and I would love for us to continue the conversation, because as much as we have some expertise, we don't have all the answers. right? We have more questions than we have answers, but collectively, as a community, if we actually put our brains to it, we can actually continue the discussion. So I encourage you to reach out to us on LinkedIn, and we're going to do the same to the folks that we met today, because so often, right, the conference ends, and we have our drinks, and we go to our work or our family life, and then we wait till the next conference. But I think we've got a great community of people that truly care about, they're passionate about this stuff. It's really important for us to be, as leaders, to really to sort of pave the way for others.
All right, well, I don't think we have any time for questions right now, so if you can all join me in thanking our panelists.
Thank you for listening, and please stay tuned for the next episode.